We haven't seen Jerry in a while at a club meeting, but we saw him probably every holiday party, so that was good. So, you know, you go over the pictures and you see Jerry at the holiday party. So. And I do appreciate all the club members that did make it to his wake and to his funeral service too. I think that's a great thing that you're able to do that. All right, going down the list. Well, Dave Seeker was intending to be here. He wanted to be here. He's not here, obviously. He's still on the mend. Let me just leave it at that. I can't get into any more details because I really don't know any more details, and Dave is just doing the best he can from day to day. And it was a chore for him to get out the broadcaster, which he got out at like 8:30 last evening. He usually sends me an edited version just to go over it, and then he make any changes, and I always send it back to him immediately. So he's trying his best. Okay, that's all I can say. And therefore, that's why I sent out that email to our DX members that we wouldn't be live out on YouTube this evening. But it will be archived, thanks to Bob Bennett coming in with his camera, and it'll be on YouTube in the near future. Okay, moving on. We have a DX member, Joe Devonshire, and if you go on our Zoom meetings on Thursday evenings and sometimes Tuesday, you will see him. He started out like this, now he's like this, and now he's like this. So his wrist is doing better. He had broken it. So we saw him last night, yeah, and he was waving with that hand. So that's a good thing. So he's doing a lot better.
Yeah, but you should have seen the other guy.
I think he said something about the cellar steps. That's
yeah, I know. He fell down.
That's what he had a fight with. Yeah.
Yeah, the steps always win.
Yeah. All right. Again, I always say this. If there's anyone else I should know about to be put on this list, please let me know, and I will record it and speak about those folks. You know, we're all getting old. Well, not all of us. Some people aren't. But you know, it's nice to keep in touch with what's going on with Infirmary Report. All right, last month our club on January 22nd and 23rd, our amateur radio operators joined in the ARRO Preparedness Field Day on station W2RTM. You can read all about it in this month's broadcaster. But Neville, I'd like you to come up and just, for people who don't seem to read the broadcaster that often.
Field Day is an annual event in which it's a preparation for an imaginary emergency. And the idea is to gather up your ham gear and take it out somewhere and throw antennas up in trees and get out your generators, make sure they start, and find your batteries and charge them up, and put all this together and make a whole bunch of contacts with other folks who are doing the same thing. So we had a good time. We had about 8 or 10 folks come around during the course of the event. Of course, we picked the hottest 2 days of the year to do it, obviously. So, well, we decided to move indoors to 98, I never remember that damn building, 98 something building, which turned out to be the air conditioner itself had decided to fail. So it was
wait, there was nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that air conditioner.
Okay.
We didn't know anything about it.
No.
It just wasn't any.
I didn't do anything.
It just wasn't any air conditioning.
Yeah, there was no air conditioning.
That's all it was.
Nothing. We didn't do anything, but there's nothing wrong with the air
Turned on the
conditioner.
thermostat and it just didn't go on. That's all.
Anyway, we made about 700 contacts with other folks around the country, and a couple of us got on CW and made about 124 or so contacts, trying to refresh our CW skills, which was a good thing. And I've not yet tallied the score, but it should be somewhere around 1,600 or 1,650 points, which is a pretty good showing.
Is that better than last year?
Yeah, I think we did 1,400 last year. So yeah, it's getting better.
Wow.
But we'd like to see more participation on the part of other hams in the club. We know you're there. We just found a new one here. So kindly come out field day next year and put it on your calendar, and we'll have some fun and make sure we keep all our stations going all night and all day. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. And you can read it all about it in the broadcaster this month. John Rapolo slept in.
It's an air bed.
It looked like a water bed. So, yeah, so you know, the idea that it was incredibly beastly hot that weekend, as we all know. And to come into the 9032A building, it was even hotter, more humid. And the point being that this was like an emergency situation in a tropical, like in Puerto Rico a few years back that suffered it so well. This is what was going on, and our intrepid operators were able to do it, and it was wonderful that they were able to make all those contacts. You know, I'm sorry, the CW. How many contacts by CW?
Oh, a little over 120 or so.
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And who was doing it?
Ted and I and whoever else might have joined in.
Okay, great. Good to hear. Okay.
And we had John McCullough and
I worked Italy. That's not part of field day, but I did work Italy.
Shirley was there.
Good, good. All right. But like you say, it'd be great to have more operators, yes?
Did you try to sing opera to the operators?
By a CW. Okay, moving along. Docent duty, Ray. I know Harry puts out blasting. How are we doing, docents?
Well, we're getting by. We're doing pretty good. As you may know, it's not unusual to have 50 to 100 people go through. So we are known and we are liked. Some of the schools who send classes can't come on Wednesdays or Saturdays. So occasionally we schedule a special visitation on Thursdays. So we'd like to see more faces out there because it's a lot of fun. You know, we're teaching kids about radio and communications, and
Passing it on to our future, yeah.
pardon?
Passing it on to our future. And, oh, speaking of Wall Township, last March, just to mention this, all right, no pressure, but last March, $1.1 billion lottery ticket was sold at the ShopRite liquor store in Neptune, okay? That was back in March. It has not been...
Claimed.
Yeah, nobody's come forward with it, so I know it's out there.
They probably just don't need the money.
Now, wait a second, if somebody here discovers it, that means they have to donate part of it to the
Well,
club.
you know, that's
You
where
know,
we're
if we were the
going with
reminders.
this. That's where we're going with this conversation.
Right, exactly.
Darren, and, you know, if it's one of our members, you know, don't be shy, you know, we'll protect you, and, you know, would, you know, like
Or a
to make
small
donation,
distribution to each club member.
you know, it'd be wonderful, you know, $1.1 billion.
Wow.
$1.1 billion that has not been acknowledged yet.
The federal government would be very happy if you claim it this way they can collect it.
Yeah, so will Full Murphy.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of members in the Neptune area, so I hope it's one of them. All right, the club loves monetary donations.
Right.
All right, so moving on. New business. Well, the most immediate new business is our annual Hamfest Swap Meet Tailgate Show on July 27th. Spaces are still available. You do know that the space has many tables you want to bring. We will accommodate you, okay? So somehow I know everybody in this room, except Pepe, has something to sell, all right?
He's got stuff too.
And like, sell it before it's too late. So let me know at intermission, let me know via email that you're coming, and I will appropriate a nice space for you. It's come to the point where the trees are so large now, there's hardly a spot that's not in shade. And anything to be said about last year was balmy, it was fantastic. The amount of shade we had and the nice breeze off the Shark Inlet there was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. We hope to have it again this time, so long as Signore Marconi smiles down on us and says, thank you, here we go again, okay? So please let me know. You know, it'll be another one. It does grow. Every year it gets a little larger, a little larger. Of course, we have our ham radio contingents. They love to show up on the same day without notifying me, but I can deal with that, so. All right. Okay, Darren, maybe you could help me with this too. I've gotten an alert on my phone from Schulman Auction and Realty Company, LLC, in Kansas City, MO.
Yeah.
And they are only an online auction, and recently they had a whole pile of ham gear that they were looking for.
I know of them. They're a real estate auction company that of late has been doing auctions of ham gear out west. I don't know them personally. I don't know anything about them other than that they've come into that business. There's a couple of auction houses around the country.
Yeah. It's amazing. I've read into it further, and more real estate, and they go into all sorts of appraisal things. For the federal government, you have to be.
The thing is, what you got to understand about the auction business is that around the country, the auction business has different. We'll say it fills a different void in every state. In the state of Pennsylvania, houses are frequently sold at auction. In the state of New Jersey, that's a lot less. Real estate auctions are a lot less common. They can happen, but auctioneers in New Jersey can't do real estate auctions. I mean, real estate, it's a lot. It's regulatory state by state changes that. But when you go
in
to
New York State, it's only tax auctions.
right. In Pennsylvania, very common for properties, houses, farms to be sold at a public auction. But they are out west. It's much more common.
Yeah. So, all right. And I'm going to ask you this question. I know the answer already, but you have not
We will
scheduled.
probably be doing
Jackson.
something. The next auction will probably be in October, I'm guessing, because Kutztown is in September.
Right.
We do not have anything scheduled in August, so the next auction will probably be in October.
In Jackson, New Jersey.
But we'll that's tentative, but we'll announce it officially once we figure out exactly when it's going to be.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, I have another thing here. It's kind of interesting. Well, at least it's interesting to your club management. We have an e-board, if you don't know that, right? 9 members, 10 members. And we are, so to speak, advertised with our e-board on the sideboard of our broadcaster. You'll see that. And it's also on our website. So consequently, our names, what we do for the club, are out there. Obviously, we have the treasurer, Harry, and me, president and vice president, and all that. Periodically, but it seems it's kind of funny in a sense, because I made a joke about this. We all know when the expression phishing, right? Phishing as in P-H-I-S-I-N-G, okay? And I make the joke that, well, people go more fishing in the summertime than they do the rest of the time of the year, and it seems to be the truth right now. And I'll say every, because it's still coming in, every e-board member since yesterday has received this notice, and I'll read it to you. And this one's to Ray. I'll read it. It's from me, by the way, okay? Hi, Ray. Can you take care of an operating expense for us? Larry Clancer is unable to complete it right away.
Wow.
Please let me know if you can pay for it using Zelle, wire transfer, Cash App, or PayPal. I will then send you vendor's payment information for the method of payment that suits you the best, and I will process your refund as soon as the treasurer is available. Kindly acknowledge receiving this email, and let me know if you can handle this. Thank you, Richard Lee. Now, if you read it a couple of times, it makes actually no sense at all. Okay.
Why don't you send them a request like the Nigerians do when they say that they need you to give them your account so they can do a test. Tell them to send you $10,000 as a test transfer to make sure it's.
Well, I'm sure as soon as I acknowledge this, if I acknowledge it like this, I'll get every day we'll be getting this. And this, by the way, is from Deborah Parks, P-A-R-K-E-S, 001 at virginiamedia.com. So I'm sure that's totally worthless email address. But this is some of the things that we deal with all the time. And in a way, the funny part is, Harry and I, being he the treasurer and me the president, he and I get this all the time. We've gotten it for years. To the point where, when Harry gets it, he doesn't even acknowledge it. He doesn't tell me, Rich, I got this again, you know. Because we get it so often, it's silly to even acknowledge it between us. But Marcia got it, Ray got it, Al got it, and I'm sure other people have gotten it that have notified me yet.
You know what, you might have to call that guy in India from Microsoft. He'll fix it for you, yeah, let him in.
Oh, the guy on YouTube that goes, he goes up and beats them up on their own email list.
I've watched those videos, they're pretty funny.
They're pretty funny.
He actually traces them down to like, not just the building, but like the desk they're sitting at and everything.
The boiler.
He crashes their cameras and stuff, it's great.
The best thing you could do with that, without being able to hack them, is you waste their time. I kept them on the phone once for 45 minutes. And while I was doing that, I was playing along, researching. Well, I knew a few from a friend I had, but I was researching Hindi swear words. So after about 35 minutes, I dismissed them and I said you, and I went on with this whole list of Indians. They go, oh, you had 80, he was pissed. I said that's 4 senior citizens you didn't get to scan.
Yeah, and of course that's, you know, on the outside, it's they go for us people, not you, Darren, but the rest of us.
Well, no, what it is, the technology and the whole thing makes sense. Where do I get those calls? I don't get them on my cell phone. I get them on the landline. Because statistically, the older people tend to have landlines where the younger people don't.
You're absolutely right. All right, let me go into the ham shack corner. All right, scars. Okay, so this Sunday, July 14th, the Sussex County Ham Fest will take place in Augusta, New Jersey. And it's 6 acres, all right? It is the largest ham fest in the Northeast, okay? I don't know of anything larger. I happen to like our ham fest better, but that's biased. But it is 6 acres of all sorts of stuff. And it starts at 8 o'clock, 8 a.m. If you're a vendor, it starts at 6. And it's been going on for many, many years. They have an inside, but most of the time the inside pavilion is for the big dogs, you know, the vendors, the ICOMs and all. And otherwise, it's rolling hills. It's a beautiful area, but it is absolutely no coverage, nothing. Okay, bring a hat, bring water. It is over by 12. You never know what you're going to find there. I've gone there many times. Can't make it this Sunday. We will be advertising our club for the 27th, thanks to Frank Johnson and of course Bobby Bennett. I have flyers, they'll be giving them out. So we get coverage that way.
You know, the thing is, and you know, there's a couple of people in this room, guys like Rob and others that have probably been to Sussex Ham Fest so many times. If you're looking for something, and maybe Neville, if you're looking for something specific and you can't find it, then you missed it. Because they have everything there. It's just an amazing amount of stuff they have there.
True, very true. Yeah. And it's a bit of a trip for a lot of people. And Judith, you want to tell us what you told on the Zoom last night? Pay attention if you're going up.
If anyone is taking Route 15 northbound, you're okay. Route 15 southbound, portion of a bridge collapsed. You're going to be detoured from Edison Road, right through town, right past Fred Street, continue down onto Berkshire Valley, and then you can shoot out onto Route 15. It's going to be a long wait, a long ride. So be prepared, so once you leave the fairgrounds, the traffic will be double.
They got the race Sunday, the Poconos too, so people will be shooting around that direction.
Could be, yes.
There'll be a lot of people on Route 80 trying to get out to that.
Yeah.
Also, they encouraging you to go.
Yeah, it would be about maybe a 10-minute, 15-minute delay at the worst.
More than that, because there's going to be double the amount of people trying to get through.
So be prepared to be in the conga line.
Yeah.
I'm missing any other ham fests. John, you have any other ham fests on the top of your head? Anybody else have any other fan fests? that are within the month of July. All right, that's the end of me. We're going to take a quick break. All right, and we're going to sail with the 50/50 tickets, and then we will have our presentation by our own club member, Jonathan Allen. We're looking forward to that. Jonathan's been working very hard on this presentation, and I'm really excited to hear about it. Okay? Quick, all right? Quick, go out, have something to eat, drink, quick, come back, and sail the 50/50 tickets. Jonathan Allen this evening with us with his presentation. All right, it's gone through different ruminations of what you were calling it this evening.
Yes.
All right, but you prefer to call it RCA and the Sarnoff Museum.
That's kind of what we debated and concluded, yes.
Okay. All right, so without further ado, pay attention, guys. Take it away, Jonathan.
Okay, well, thank you all for showing up on this hot, sweaty evening. And, excuse me, topic tonight is RCA and the Sarnoff Museum. First, let me give a few credits to some people who have helped in getting this business going. One volunteer is Herb Johnson, who contributed his 2020 web document, RCA's former Sarnoff Center, and TCNJ's Sarnoff collection, and also for his expertise on early computers and their history. Dr. Florencia Perry, we just call her Flory, for historical knowledge and curation of the collection, particularly during my early days of working there. And the late College of New Jersey professor, Dr. Alan Katz, for his years of hard work creating, supporting, and maintaining the collection.
Jonathan, I'm sorry a second. I should have done this before. Could you tell, because so many of us don't know who we are to each other. Could you tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, I will. Okay. By training, I am a physicist. My AB, BS, and PhD are all in physics, but mostly applied physics. And I've spent most of my career in electronics and RF. In fact, my email address is rfguy13 because I work in the industrial frequency 13 megahertz. Anyway, after grad school, I worked in some environmental R&D, aerosol particle analysis and that kind of thing. And I then moved on to solar energy. I worked for the Cronau Corporation with my buddy Pete here. We're both Cronads, and spent some time there. And then did independent consulting, and then now that I'm somewhat retired, I spend part-time working at the Sarnoff Museum, technically called the collection, but we call it Sarnoff Museum at the College of New Jersey. And I'll get, in a little while, I'll get to how that came about. So I'm very much into old electronics, because I got started in electronics when I was young and I'm now old. So anyway, I guess that's sufficient, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah. The Sarnoff collection celebrates the achievement. Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh, but yeah. We're talking about Professor Alan Katz. He died just a couple of weeks ago. He was a good friend, and we were quite sad about it for anybody who knew him. He was a professor at the college. The Sarnoff collection celebrates the achievements of both David Sarnoff and the Radio Corporation of America. And we'll have to stop with the two entities separately and then merge them together, as in fact history did. David Sarnoff was born in Russia in 1891. His family, fleeing prejudice and anti-Semitism, migrated to New York City, where they landed in 1900. So they immigrated to New York in 1900, and as a young man, as a boy, David sold Yiddish newspapers on the streets of New York City. And when his father caught tuberculosis and was unable to support the family any longer, David had to seek a more lucrative job. He searched the help wanted ads and posters and such, but somewhat by accident, he joined the Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company in 1906 at the age of 15. Let's see if I can do something. Is there a way to get back to the, let me see, on this? I just want to get the arrow so I can, no, never mind, it's all right. Although he joined the Marconi Company as just an office boy, David saw the chance for advancement, and he was fascinated by the technology of wireless communication. So he taught himself Morse code and some radio theory. And over the next 13 years, Sarnoff rose to be a commercial manager and a radio operator, serving both on ship stations and on shore stations. His most famous adventure occurred in 1912 at the Marconi Wireless Station at the top floor of the Wanamaker department store in New York City. Wanamaker wanted, apparently, to show that they were up with the latest technology, so set up the station on the top floor of the department store and allowed the Marconi Company to be in charge of it. The Marconi Company generally sort of leased out or hired out their stations with their own employees operating, even on ships. The radio operator on a ship was not an employee of the ship company, he was an employee of the Marconi Company. Well, one day he reported to work at, I guess, his usual time, say 9 o'clock in the morning, and picked up a huge amount of radio traffic because the Titanic had just struck the iceberg a couple of hours earlier, and there were all kinds of radio messages being transferred. So he got on, and a couple of assistant operators joined with him, and for the next couple of days, they handled huge amounts of message traffic associated with rescue, identifying survivors, transmitting their names to those who needed to know who they were, and directing other ships to go to the scene of the accident so that they could help with rescue and relief. At the end of this adventure, of course, there were many operators all over the country and the world and all around the Atlantic involved in this, but he presented himself as the operator. But then, during World War I, Sarnoff served as Marconi's commercial manager, including the company's Roselle Park, New Jersey factory. At the close of the war, and here's his telegraph key that he used for that communication. And if you look at the cross-section of those contacts, they're about 1 centimeter in diameter, made of silver, and they are that heavy because it switched the full power for the multi-hundreds of watts spark transmitter. In those days, spark transmitters were the way you went. This is 1912. At the close, during World War I, at the close of the war, the only company in a position to handle commercial, ship-to-shore, and transatlantic radio communication was the Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company of America. The only company serving America was that, a branch of British Marconi. And although its U.S. stations were regulated by the government during the conflict, this American Marconi was still owned by a foreign company. The headquarters was still British Marconi. The value of the radio communications that were demonstrated during the World War I, the U.S. did not want such service under foreign management or ownership, even when that management was within a friendly nation. It must be domestically American-owned and based. Now, since General Electric had the patents and manufacturing capacity for the Alexanderson alternators, some of you probably know what they are. They're AC alternators. They work at radio frequencies, not at 60 cycles. The Alexanderson alternator was then the dominant system for high-power wireless transmission. And the government therefore arranged for GE to buy out British Marconi in 1919 and create a branch company called RCA, the Radio Corporation of America. And Sarnoff then transferred to British, got transferred to RCA. His way up the ranks of RCA to become the chief executive officer, the capo di tutti capi. Early on, he saw the possibility of radio expanding beyond communication and getting into broadcasting, and there is a clear distinction. Communication, you have one transmitting station and one receiving station, maybe just a small, or maybe a small number of them. It's often two-way. Broadcasting is a term that actually is borrowed from agriculture. The farmer, instead of planting seeds one by one along a row, has a basket, and he broadly casts the seeds over the field, and where they take seed and grow. So you have one transmitting station and many people over the countryside listening to it. Well, at about this time, vacuum tubes were becoming practical, reliable, and economical. So the subsequent history of RCA then is an exciting adventure, largely centered on broadcasting, but unfortunately not the main topic of this talk. Maybe at a future meeting that would be kind of fun to do. But now let's move ahead to the museum, which is the main topic of our event. And we will, in touring the museum, get to a lot of these topics which we're skipping in this initial history. RCA broke ground on their West Windsor Research and Development Campus, known as RCA Laboratories, in 1941, and formally opened it in 42. And here's an aerial photo of the labs taken in 1944. The labs contributed to R&D for both military technology during World War II, and then civilian development, such as both black and white and color TV, video recording, AM and FM radio broadcasting, general electronics, vacuum tubes, and solid-state electronics. In 1967, during the facility's 25th anniversary celebrations, RCA opened the David Sarnoff Library, which was not just a library, but was a publicly accessible collection of books, papers, instruments, correspondence, models, memorabilia, and other products and devices associated with RCA's history. And it became a dedicated public museum. A significant part of its collection amounted to trophies of Sarnoff's achievements, that is, connections with famous people. RCA, however, was about to start on its decline. And what happened was that Sarnoff's health was failing, and in 1970, at the age of 79, he retired and appointed his son Robert to be the new chief. Sadly, David died the following year at the age of 80. Putting it politely, Robert lacked Daddy's talent for management, and especially the ability to identify winning technologies which should be developed and commercialized. And we will point out examples of this during the tour. Robert wanted to show that he was not just Daddy's little boy, but that he could make his own mark. So he canceled some existing programs even though they were progressing. He sacked some of the people involved in long-term research and created new enterprises. He even expanded RCA into a conglomerate, including fields totally unrelated to RCA's expertise, buying out, among others, the Random House Publishing Company, Hertz Rent-A-Car, and Banquet Foods, and one of you guys pointed out that they also bought into United Fruit. By contrast, he sold out the recently created computer division of RCA for a substantial loss. Finally, in 1986, General Electric, which, as you know, had owned RCA in the early days before it became an independent company, bought it back, cheap. And the remains of RCA now belong to GE, which liquidated most of the corporation's assets. In 1987-88, General Electric transferred the David Sarnoff Research Center to the Sarnoff Corporation, which was a subsidiary of the nonprofit Stanford Research Institute, SRI International, which to this day occupies that building up on Route 1. In 2009, SRI decided to shut down the David Sarnoff Library. One of the stories I heard about it was that they were involved in secret government research, and they did not want people coming into the museum and wandering out into the main part of the building where the classified stuff was going on. There was a technological solution, but unfortunately, it was not consistent with their philosophy. It was, I believe it's called a, let's see, what's the term? Door! The problem with a door, though, is it's made of wood, not titanium. So they couldn't possibly install it. So in 2010, his assets were transferred to other institutions and locations, including, by the way, InfoAge, yay, InfoAge, and the College of New Jersey, and most of the papers went to the Hagley Museum in Delaware. The majority of artifacts, radio, TV, communication stuff, electronic instruments, ended up at TCNJ. Emily Kroll, from the School of Arts and Communication, became the first director, and the collection also received an IEEE grant to help it get started. Then in 2013, finally, TCNJ opened the Sarnoff collection with Florencia Perry, we called her Flory, as part-time curator. She was a PhD candidate at Princeton at the time. By the way, she's now earned that degree, and the collection fell under the management of the School of Art and Communication. Why them? Well, they were the only department that was familiar with running exhibits in museums. So, let them run this one. However, since the collection involved a lot of science and technology, it needed technical support. Professor Al Katz, whom I mentioned in our introduction, of the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department, recruited, maybe the better term is drafted, volunteers with EE in scientific knowledge and skills. Visiting scholar Dr. Benjamin Gross helped with the initial organizing, while Herb Johnson, an expert in computer history, documented the RCA creations in that field, such as the Cosmac Home Computer Series. My duties included restoration and documentation of radio, TV, and general electronics. I also served as a docent and occasional lecturer. Flory organized special temporary exhibits, often accompanied by related lectures. Speakers included college faculty, museum workers, including volunteers, and invited guests. One management problem for Sarnoff is that it is a small museum, so it needs only a part-time curator. It's hard to find someone trained as a curator who's willing to work part-time there. So Flory left at the end of 2020 to take a full-time position as the curator of the MIT Museum in Cambridge, Mass. And that's where she still is now. I keep in touch with her. A new part-time curator named Brian Wallace took over for a while until Sarnoff finally ran short of funding at the end of, in the late spring of 2023. Since then, the collection has transferred from art and communication, finally, into engineering, but is still struggling to get some funding. And so at present, it's closed most of the time except for occasional special events. It used to be open every Wednesday afternoon and every Sunday afternoon. Given that background in history, now let's take a photographic tour of the collection. And this is where we walk into the collection. Looking into through the main door. And you can see a pretty good cross-section of the exhibits. So a lot of these you're going to see up close. Look to the left, and you'll see that, that bust there, you see the yellow wall. That is Sarnoff's wall, as we call it. And it has, if you look to the left, the picture just down from the top, you can see that picture of the family. Below that is a bigger, wider picture, and that is the 1921 opening of a transatlantic communications station at New Brunswick. And present at that event were Charles Steinmetz, a scientist from GE, Albert Einstein, who by that time was living in the United States, Nikola Tesla, of course David Sarnoff, Irving Langmuir, and Albert W. Hull, who was instrumental in the invention of a lot of vacuum tube and magnetron. If they were going to get into broadcasting, they needed to have radios for people to listen to. And here we have a very early one, Radiola 1, the Areola Senior, one-tube radio, 1921. And you can see in the upper right, the one tube is sticking its nose out of the front panel. And if you look at the cover, you'll see at the top of the cover the name Westinghouse. And at the bottom of the cover, Radio Corporation of America. Why Westinghouse? What Westinghouse got to do with this? Well, RCA was recently founded, and they had no manufacturing capacity. So they built, they designed the prototype, sent the drawings and maybe a model to the Westinghouse company, which could manufacture things, and they actually built the radio. And RCA peddled it under their own name, but with credit to Westinghouse, of course. Next radio is the Radiola 2. Ola is a common suffix in those days for equipment associated with audio. The Victrola, the Radiola, the Audiola. I could probably think about this too if I spent some time on it. Here's a more advanced set. This one, something went wrong with this slide. It's the Radiola 20. Anyway, here's the Radiola 60 Superhet. They finally had a super heterodyne receiver. And here is the Radiola 26, portable. How can something that bulky be portable? Well, it's obviously portable. Look at the top. There's a handle to pick it up. Well, of course, a few years later, they did make a more portable, using the recently invented 7-pin miniature tubes. And this set is only about 8 inches wide end to end. And you lift the cover, it automatically turns the radio on. A bigger radio here is the console, built in 1937. And this we have playing whenever the museum is open to visitors. We have an Apple iPod hidden down on the floor behind it. It plays through a 1-tube phono oscillator. Very interesting use of a pentagram converter, by the way. And so the signal actually travels through the ether about that far and gets to the radio receiver, and people can listen to old radio programs contemporary with the set itself. Let me see if it's also nearby, we have the vacuum tube exhibit. Here's a turntable that slowly rotates with a collection of vacuum tubes, arranged in a compromise between chronological and evolutionary order. Starting with an Audion, as you can see, that spherical tube, and going all the way up to
Looks like a new Vista.
a new Vista, yes, the little new Vista. I can name it something. A new Vista, which looks like a transistor, but it actually is a little vacuum tube and is excellent for use at the ultra-high frequencies. There are also some big fat tubes. And here is a VHF-UHF transmitting tube, water-cooled, and it can pump out 10 to 15 kilowatts of RF. Well, I mentioned before that, yes, yes.
I know the gentleman who designed that tube. His name
Oh,
is
really?
Will Bennett.
Oh, good.
He worked with us in Plasma Physics Laboratory about 10 years after, 20 years after.
No
he
relation.
designed that tube.
Well, thank you. Anyway, as I mentioned before, RCA, when it started out, did not have manufacturing capacity, but there was a very important merger that occurred in the late 1920s. And that was with Victor Talking Machine Company. And here we have Little Nipper, the trademark doggy of the Victor Company. And he's looking into the horn of the phonograph, and the slogan is his master's voice, because presumably the fidelity is such that he cannot discriminate between his real master's voice and the record of his master's voice. And it reminds me of the more recent slogan, is it live or is it Memorex? We have at the museum now a Victrola. Here's our Ola again. And this machine is 100% mechanical. There is nothing electrical or electronic about it. The motor is crank up spring with a precision centrifugal governor to keep the speed constant. And the needle vibrates side to side, Berliner mode, vibrates a mica diaphragm, and the sound goes through the tone arm and comes out the horn, which is built into the bottom of the case. And you can open and close those doors to vary your volume. Now, once RCA and Victor had merged, RCA enjoyed the manufacturing capacity of the Victor company, and you can see they were capable of some pretty good craftsmanship. And Victor could now enjoy the advantages of vacuum tube amplification, which critically improved both the recording and playback process. And here we have, somewhat later, radio phonograph. The radio and the phonograph share the audio amplifier sections and the loudspeaker. And you can play records on it, or you can switch over and operate it as a radio. This was built around 1947. Here we have an even fancier one, a radio, phonograph, television console, where you have all three functions in one big box. And they share whatever electronics they can between the various functions. Well, finally, the next topic is World War II. David Sarnoff is extremely grateful to the United States for the hospitality and allowing him to immigrate to this country and escape some very rotten conditions. And he's dedicated the full resources of RCA to the war effort. He also appreciated what might happen if the Axis won, to him, his family, and his people. Probably the most famous artifact that came out of that period is the AR-88 communications receiver. Now this is a first-class receiver even by today's standards. The signal comes in through the antenna and goes through 2 pentode tuned radio frequency stages before it gets to the mixer. These improve selectivity, get rid of image reception, and it also makes sure that absolutely no RF from the local oscillator sneaks back out the antenna. And in a military radio receiver, you damn well better make sure it doesn't. And I'll tell you in a minute why it's even more important. The AR-88 turned out to be the favorite receiver for the code-breaking team at Bletchley Park in England. You know, Alan Turing was the one who did a lot of the breaking of the Enigma code. Well, you can be the best code breaker, but if you can't suck the signal out of the ether, it ain't going to do you much good. And this is the receiver that did it. It even has variable selectivity. And by the way, when we this set now works. When we got it, it was not in such good shape. So it took a fair amount of work to get this thing working well, and to get it working at all, in fact. But you can see, there it is. Another piece of electronics that RCA contributed to the war effort is this bomb guidance device. Say you're flying in an airplane at tens of thousands of feet. You're using the best computerized bomb sight, Sperry or Norton. You sight on the target, you fly, you keep the process on the target, the computer integrates for the few minutes that are required, and then you drop your bomb. And let's say you're flying at about 30,000 feet. You know the wind speed where you are because of your drift, which you can measure by sighting the ground. You may even know what the wind speed is on the ground because you might have an agent down there who sneaks that information out. But suppose between 10 and 20,000 feet, there's a huge layer of atmosphere blasting wind in a direction you don't know. You're going to miss, no matter how good your optics are. Well, here if you have a gliding bomb, the bombardier can, with this television camera and a transmitter, get the bomb's eye view of exactly where it's headed. And by radio control, he can steer it to correct for any errors caused by anomalies of the wind and computer error and that kind of thing, and hit the target smacko. Unfortunately, it was perfected a little too late in the war to make a major contribution. And one other disadvantage it had was that if the enemy found out the frequencies in which it was operating, they could jam and prevent it from working as well as it might. Another item that RCA made for the War Department, they had the correct name back then, was this transceiver for the Navy. Well, why would the Navy need a portable transceiver? Well, one of the things the Navy does is they shell targets on the shore. And so what you do is you sneak ashore a forward observer with one of these transceivers. And when you start firing the shells, he notices, he can see the target, he can see where the shell hits, and send back information to the gunnery officer to correct the aim until you can hit the target smack on. Now this ain't a fun job, because here you are in enemy territory, transmitting radio signals, which if they pick up, they'll be able to find you. And there's also the minor inconvenience that a shell that goes a bit off course may hit you. And if you get hit with a 16-inch shell from a battleship, that can really spoil your day. But that was the job, and brave fellows did it. RCA also contributed most of the communication and radio equipment and protocols for the Normandy invasion, which was the largest military operation in the world up to that point. At the end of the war, he was rewarded by being appointed a brigadier general. And here he is in his general's uniform. And for the rest of his life, he insisted on being addressed as General Sarnoff. Next topic, next area of exhibits is television. Here we have an iconoscope camera tube built in the late 1930s. This iconoscope works, but it's not very sensitive. You need basically full sunlight to form a broadcast quality image. Indoors, it takes a huge amount of artificial light to mimic a full sunlight. That's 1,000 watts per square meter. That's a lot of poop. So, but Sarnoff was one of those who was trying to promote television. If you can send a voice, why can't you send a picture? And here he is at the 1939 World's Fair, standing behind a podium, facing a television camera, and the images were transmitted to receivers, monitors around the grounds, and people could see him on the monitor. They could even, when he wasn't, after he was done speaking, they could walk in front of the camera and see their own image on one of the screens that was within sight. Now, to overcome the weakness of the iconoscope, they came up with the image orthicon. It's called the little one on the right is the one that goes in that bomb guidance system. The longer iconoscope in the middle is the one that is used for television broadcasting cameras. Yeah, they call it image orthicon in that on the left side is the photocathode. The photons strike it. They did then through the photoelectric effect, Einstein 1905. Physicists, I haven't bring that in. By the way, it was for the photoelectric effect that Einstein won the Nobel Prize, not for relativity. It had not been sufficiently verified at the time. Anyway, here you have your the electrons, the photoelectrons are generated, and they strike a target where they dislodge more electrons, another target more. So you get a cascade effect, and you can get a gain of hundreds of thousands without any of the noise that you get through a normal vacuum tube amplifier with the grid resistor imposing its resistive noise on the input. And that enabled you to take broadcast quality television images in rather poor light, some say even in full moonlight. So the image orthicon was fundamental to the development of commercial TV after the war. The collection also have an assortment of other camera tubes, each with its own little nameplate, and they consist of image orthicons, vidicons, and a few other specialty type camera tubes. Each with a little nameplate identifying just what it is. Well, TV receivers were the next thing. You can broadcast all the television shows you want, but if there's nobody out there with a television set to watch them, it's not going to be very commercially practical. So here's a set that was introduced in 1946, right after the war. It was one of a couple of models that were introduced at that time, and these were the first commercial TV sets to be introduced in the United States. And by the way, this one works. It's been restored and it works. A couple of years later came this set here, the ATS-30, which is a 10-inch TV, and this is the first one that really was popular, and they sold thousands of them. And this one, as you can see, works. You can see an image on the screen. Let's turn the lights down, and we'll see the screen a little bit better. Hey, that's Groucho Marx. You bet your life. And, yes?
Yeah, I restored that set.
I know you did. I'm sorry I didn't give you credit. Yes.
Thank you.
Our buddy Scott actually did most of the restoration on that, and I just had to do a few minor things afterwards. Yes, an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry I left you out there. And then once again, this is kept playing whenever the museum is open to visitors. The biggest item in the collection is the electron microscope, which was built in the late 1940s. And the theory of the electron microscope is that the limit of resolution, the smallest thing you can see with the light microscope, is an object whose dimensions are approximately the wavelength of the light you're using, which is about 1/2 micron. Anything smaller than about 1/2 micron, you really can't resolve it with ordinary visible light. Well, an electron, under the Broglie theory, has an effective wavelength. The higher the energy, the higher the momentum actually, the shorter the wavelength, and hence the smaller the object you can resolve. Tens of thousands of times shorter than a visible light wavelength. That doesn't mean you can achieve all that resolution, but you can certainly do orders of magnitude better than you can do with visible light. Of course, your specimen has to be in a vacuum because otherwise the electrons just scatter off air molecules. But you ask, why would a company which builds television stuff want to build an electron microscope? Well, what do you have to do in a television, with television? Both in the camera tube and the picture tube, you have to generate an electron beam. You have to focus it. You have to deflect it, scan it, detect it. Well, what do you have to do in an electron microscope? The same basic stuff. It's called electron optics. So it fit right, actually, more than you'd expect, it fit right into their business. They didn't make huge numbers of them, but they were a profitable product. Well, with all these TV sets out in people's homes, you've got to keep them working. And as with anything, they needed periodically to be fixed. So they created Mr. Fix-It. And here he is marching off to your house to fix your television or console radio or other thing, which is too big to conveniently pick up under your arm and run to the licensed RCA service shop. They also had to make instruments for their technicians to use. Here's a picture tube tester. This is a senior voltometer vacuum tube voltmeter. We actually use that at the museum for servicing the equipment that we need to restore and repair. Scott, you probably use one for fixing that TV, huh? Now this ain't an HP, but it's still a very respectable, accurate, reliable DTVM. Same for oscilloscopes. This is a nice little 3-inch scope. It's not a Tektronix, but it's adequate for fixing TV sets. And here's our tube caddy again. RCA did a really clever thing. They designed all of their radios, TVs, and other consumer electronics to use a limited catalog of tubes, so that the service technician could carry in his tube caddy almost any tube that would be necessary for field service of equipment that he had to visit. And there's also room in there for some simple test equipment and tools. Now we've got black and white television. Let's look at color. This is the first shadow mask cathode ray tube. Do you know how shadow mask tube works? Do you want me to go through it a little bit? Well, you've got 3 electron guns in the neck of the tube. One for red, one for green, one for blue. And just behind the phosphor screen is a perforated plate of metal with little holes in it. And the holes are aligned such that the red gun can pass through this shadow mask such that the red gun can strike only the red phosphor dots on the screen, same green to the green and the blue to the blue, and so you can get a full color picture by controlling the 3 electron guns in the neck of the tube. The first color television set is this set here, and this was introduced in 1954. It was very expensive, but it was both forward and reverse compatible. That means if you had a black and white set, you could still watch the color shows, albeit in black and white. And since not all broadcasts were in color, if you had a color set, the color was, and the show was in black and white, you could watch it on your color set and it would appear in black and white. Here is a later color TV set, which is a bit more modern looking. For its contribution to color television, the RCA and especially David Sarnoff won an Emmy Award. Interesting etymology of Emmy. The image orthicon is a kind of a long name for a key invention. So they shortened it to IMI, short for image orthicon. And since the figure of the trophy has a female form, they feminized it to Emmy. And Emmy is a name that still persists to this day. Sarnoff also was admitted to the New Jersey Hall of Fame, and here's his trophy for that. And RCA then went on when solid-state components became the technology. Here's a collection of semiconductors, which include both discrete transistors, integrated circuits, analog and digital. And to demonstrate just how powerful solid-state stuff was, they made a prototype solid-state TV in the 1950s. And here's the fellow carrying it. Obviously it's portable because it's got a handle on the top. The only non-solid state, the only vacuum tube in it is the picture tube, because at that time flat screens had not yet been developed. So here we go with that. And here you can see it from the side. The case is made out of plexiglass, so you can see all the goodies inside. Obviously this was not meant to be a commercial product, but just a demonstration. And as I say, this was all occurring around the time that Junior took over, that Robert took over from Daddy. Another major contribution he made, which was absolutely necessary to the survival of the company, was to replace the old trademark, known as the meatball, with the new one with the funny script on it. I mean, I can't imagine how RCA could have possibly survived unless he made that fundamental technical innovation. But what really made a big difference was the Selectavision capacitive electronic disc player. And here is one. The idea is it plays a disc that's very similar to a phonograph record, except it's Edison mode. Instead of the needle wobbling side to side, wobbles, the grooves are hill and dale. When a hill is passing under the stylus, the capacitance between the stylus and the disc is maximum. It's passing over a valley, a dale, it's minimum. And thus, if you put out very high frequency RF on the stylus, you are basically modulating that RF by the change in the reactance of that capacitance as the disc spins under the stylus. That is actually working. And you can see it moving on the TV screen. It took from 1964 to 1981, 17 years to get this thing going. The development cost was $200,000, and remember that between 1981, 1964 to 1981, inflation was well over a factor of 10. The price of a movie disc for a simple little cartoon was $15. For a feature movie was generally around $35. Once again, remember you've got a substantial inflation, maybe on the order of 10 times.
John?
Yes.
You said $200,000. I guess you meant 200 million? The development cost?
Yeah, I'm sorry, 200 million, yes. 200 million, you're right.
Maybe the one you have, John, is 200,000.
What?
No, John has one of these in his personal collection. That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, that's right, it was 200 megabucks. Thank you.
John, I just wanted to...
Yeah, thank you for nailing that.
Question? Question? Okay.
So yes?
I'm curious, was it an FM modulation or AM modulation?
It was amplitude modulation because you're controlling the amplitude by the series capacitance.
Okay.
But it controlled an oscillator built into the head behind the needle.
Oh, really?
It created FM from the capacitance.
It was just for the audio, or for the
whole thing.
I didn't know that.
The whole signal. Yes,
Yeah.
the capacitance increased and
That's right,
decreased,
it could
changed
FM
the
it
frequency
too,
of a
yeah.
very high frequency loss.
Anyway,
It's really odd.
Just curious.
there were some, even after it was perfected, there was some serious problems. By the time it came out, we had other technologies like videotape, Betamax, VHS, and some Laserdisc systems. So, which were much cheaper, and with tape, of course, you can record, which means you can not only make the world's funniest home movies, but you can also record a TV show from when you can't watch it, and then rewind and watch it when you can. Even when it was developed to the point where it really worked, it didn't sell. People wouldn't buy them. And that's really what brought RCA down. But they also did a couple of other things. They were trying to go with flat screen TV, which meant that one of the ways they wanted to do it was with an array of little LEDs. So they had red and green LEDs, but not a blue one. Until a fellow named Herbert Marushka, a young scientist at RCA, managed to get gallium nitride to make a high band gap semiconductor which could emit the blue light. And it was very inefficient, but it demonstrated the blue LED was possible. Ben Gross and I, in 2014, the modern LED, the modern blue LED, won the Nobel Prize for Physics. And to commemorate that, Ben Gross and I contacted Mr. Marushka, who was living in Florida at the time, and He coached us through telling us what voltages and currents it would like. I thought it would be 10 milliamps, just like any other LED. Lucky I didn't, because it might have fried it. Just wanted about 2 or 3 milliamps. But we got it lit, and we demonstrated, and made a film of it, and it's on YouTube. I'd probably look it up. First blue LED. The modern blue LED, using the blue with a phosphor to convert down to the longer wavelengths, in fact, is what we use for our LED illumination now. RCA also developed some photovoltaic cells, amorphous thin film silicon, and this is one that we're demonstrating right now. You can see that the little milliammeter is pegged, which means that it must be working. And after RCA fell apart, the invention transferred to a company known as the Cronach Corporation. Pete and I were buddies there, working on trying to get amorphous silicon into a commercial product. RCA also decided to get into computers under the direction of the new head. And the problem, he was going to take on a little company, you probably never heard of it, that works in somebody's basement, what, I don't know, called International Business Machines. By the way, gentlemen, after we get done here, I'm going to stop at the sporting goods store and pick up a pair of boxing gloves, and I'm going to knock out the champion, and I'll be the champion. But a guy named Weisbecker did a lot of the work on computers, and here's the exhibit of computer-related stuff. And the best known of his computers was a home computer called the Cosmac. RCA also made one of the cameras, a color TV camera that went with the astronauts on the Apollo missions to the moon. And we have the actual camera is available to anyone who wants it, just have to go to the moon and collect it. They did not bring it back because it was much more important to bring back mineral samples. And so we have a model of it, just a wooden model of it in the museum. And that mylar, gold-plated mylar wrapper is to protect it from the direct rays of the sun, which are pretty intense on the moon because there's no atmosphere to attenuate them. We also have some demonstration circuits. Here's a triode demonstrator. If you look on the left, there's a meter. In the middle, there's a pot. We can adjust the grid bias. The meter on the left indicates the grid voltage. The meter on the right indicates the plate current. And you can see the relationship between between the grid voltage and plate current, which is exactly how the tube amplifies. And for the sake of solid state, we have the same sort of a thing that we built for MOSFET. The left meter indicates the gate voltage, and the right meter indicates the drain current. You can see the gain. Well, and finally, we have an open television set. This is a TV built in the late 1940s. It works, but we have it open. So you can see the guts, see where all the various parts are, and how they look. And beside it, on the table, we have drawings which show both block diagrams and a map of the chassis, so you can see where the RF section is, the video section, audio section, power supply, all that kind of stuff. And that is also there to help visitors learn about how television is designed and how it works. So, from Little Nipper and me, we wish you a good night. Hope you enjoy the weekend. And of course, if you have any questions, I'll do the best I can to answer them. And also corrections, because apparently I've gotten a couple of little facts not exactly right. So,
Q&A, guys.
Yep.